Good morning, everyone. My name is Luisa Godinho from Portugal, and I am co-author along with Carlos Oliveira Santos of the paper I am about to present on critical consciousness and social marketing. This work has been published in the recent Palgrave Encyclopedia of Social Marketing. So social marketing, as you know, is a multidisciplinary and trans-theoretical field. In order to influence behavior for social good, social marketing must establish links with all kinds of fields and approaches. And our paper, it seeks to identify critical consciousness. I will call it CC here. And identify critical consciousness theoretically and practically, and to establish a relationship with social marketing. Critical consciousness is also referred to as conscientization, from conscientização in Portuguese. And it is a concept mainly developed by the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. Since the 1950s, CC has been quite influential with important scholarly practice and policy implications. In a recent discussion, Noam Chomsky remembered that Freire's main book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, written in 1968 and published in 1970. He remembered that this book is an instrument for consciousness raising, which will lead to change in institutions. Freire's early ideas involved cooperative decision-making, social participation, and political responsibility. He did not see education as merely a way to master academic standards or skills that would help a person professionally. Instead, Freire cared that learners understood their social problems and that they discovered themselves as creative agents. And in this sense, critical consciousness has a transformative potential that could be used to inform the structure and content of consciousness to address oppressive conditions for those most impacted. As a process of reflection on the realities that produce the potential for change at one or more socio-ecosystemic levels, individual, institutional, CC represents progressive ideas in action. In Freire's cultural action and conscientization, CC is defined as, and I'll be quoting, the process in which men and women, not as recipients, but as knowing subjects, achieve a deepening awareness of both social cultural reality, which shapes their lives, and of their own capacity to transform that reality. Some researchers underline not only these two concepts, cognitive and attitudinal, but also the behavior, including efficacy and action. Our study presents CC's concepts and process and makes a brief review of its several interventions. Based on the main social marketing journals, the Social Marketing Quarterly and the Journal of Social Marketing, our study collects the studies in this field that could have connections with the CC approach. It is concluded that there are actually several relations and that CC can be useful to deal with certain social marketing interventions weaknesses. Now, let's look at CC's theoretical framework. Although Freire's work is essential to this field, critical consciousness also has its roots in Confucianism or in ancient Greek philosophy. More recently, Freire's approach can be mainly related to some 19th and 20th century references on three levels: philosophical, pedagogical, and religious. The main line of his thought derives from Hegel's postulate, according to which man as man is free, including the concepts of lordship and bondage, both as forms of dependent consciousness. Lordship being something merely negative as a power over the other, the bondsman, holding it in subjection. And in bondage, even in the utter dependence of their individual existence, the aim of the bondsman must be to free and to rediscover himself by himself. The human being could understand the nature of its alienated existence through formative process of reflection and self-consciousness. This Hegelian analysis influenced Karl Marx's own concepts of alienation and class consciousness, and also the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, mixing Marx and Freud, developed important notions about new forms of control and alienation like commodification, reification, fetishization, and obviously a critic of mass culture. Existentialism, especially with Jean-Paul Sartre, presented self-consciousness as a project of self-definition through freedom, choice, and commitment. A recognition that, and I'll be quoting, "I am a being who can be responsive for who I am," end of quote. Keeping the indivisible solidarity between the world and humans. In what concerns colonial domination and blackness, the work of Frantz Fanon was also quite important in Freire's work. Freire integrated all these philosophical references in his work in a creative and a pragmatic way, including pedagogy as an essential dimension. So for him, education becomes the practice of freedom. It's the way how men and women deal critically and creatively and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. And in this sense, we can identify John Dewey as being a major influence. Dewey's concept of education as a social function for democracy, the teacher's role in fostering students' social competencies, learning by doing, and many other concepts resonated with Freire's thought. Even Illich's approach to deschooling society was also quite familiar to Freire, and they even co-authored some publications. Religiously, as a Christian humanist, Freire's contribution to CC went through a parallel path with liberation theology as advocated by Leonardo Boff, Helder Câmara, and others. It included a return to the original Gospels and a decentralized church involving the poor in their own liberation and offering Christianity as a tool toward a more perfect society. In 1970, Freire became a consultant of the Office of Education of the World Council of Churches, where he developed literacy programs for African and South American countries. Now let's look at critical consciousness as a process. So CC works with cultural circles, which means developing groups of people that include coordinators as facilitators and participants engaging in a dialogue about the world and their situation in it. And this dialogue cannot be reduced to the act of one person depositing ideas in another nor can it become a simple exchange of ideas to be consumed by the discussants. It must be an encounter between women and men who name the world to improve their human condition. And together they must identify limit situations, which are situations that limit them in their full humanization. And also select what Freud calls generative themes that introduce those persons to a critical form of thinking about their world. CC's methodology is an evolving process that includes these steps. To improve this constructive dialogue, several tools and techniques can be used. Textual and visual didactic aids can be used for reflection and debating, and dramatization techniques applied to the generative themes and the specific situations involved. Reflective questioning, open discussions without forms of privilege or oppression are helpful, as well as creating supportive contexts and psychosocial, emotional, and moral support to challenge injustice from peers, family, community, and social environment. Acquiring skills and resources needed to transform oppressive elements and intersecting experiences of oppression with which members of multiple oppressed groups must contend are useful as well. Dialogue, reflection, and capacity improvement must be articulated with action. The cultural circles must define and engage in appropriate forms of behavior and intervention, and this is also a process of reflection, of awareness, and of empowerment. So as a whole, CC is a fluid process without a finite endpoint, with several levels of consciousness and results submitted to critical evaluation. CC basic assumption is that the human person's ontological vocation is to be an individual who acts upon and transforms his world. And in doing so, he moves toward ever new possibilities of a fuller and of a richer life, both individually and collectively. Provided with the proper conditions and tools, the individual, he can gradually perceive personal and social reality, and also deal critically with it. Within appropriate groups, exteriorizing their own words about their problems in freedom and dialogue, they could generate a critical and conscious capacity to engage in social action to improve their human condition. Now let's look at CC as a field. So critical consciousness is now an established field and spread across various movements and situations with a significant and innovative scholarship and ongoing reformulation. As a process to achieve humanization, which presupposes the elimination of dehumanizing oppression, CC interventions can be applied in numerous areas and situations. Recent research shows that CC has actually provided ideas for solutions in all these areas. Thus, research seems to support a relationship between CC and positive outcomes, and the reduction of negative consequences associated with oppression. Recent movements such as the Me Too or environmental ones, they renew and reinterpret CC to prevent or ameliorate inequitable conditions. Now, let's look at the link between CC and social marketing. Now, CC and social marketing are like flowers, let's say, growing in the same field, if you allow me the metaphor. I mean, both are concerned with behavior change for social and personal good, as well as for well-being improvement. If social marketing is perceived, as Kotler saw it, as one process tool in a discipline called social change management, then the relationship can be seen as being even stronger. In terms of process, among the theories and models most widely used in social marketing, there are many aspects that we can recognize in CC's approach. Although there is no systematic reference to CC, many social marketing types of research and interventions lead to questions where CC might actually be a useful contribution. Let me mention just this specific intervention. The Chicago Cook County Hospital's Baby Friendly Hospital initiative, supported by the UNICEF in Dublin in 1995, which refers explicitly that, and I'm quoting, putting into practice the principles of social marketing. This initiative relies on the principles of empowerment education, an interactive methodology encouraging critical thinking and the sharing of lived experiences based on the work of Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator. Since at least Alan Andreessen, when he introduced the upstream approach to social marketing, that our discipline has been focused on how can we understand social marketing's robust nature for influencing change, thus opening the way to the type of social conditioning factors and goals to which CC is also focused. This enlargement has close interconnections with CC and can be enhanced by using CC approaches. Now, finally, I'll be doing some discussion and present you to the main conclusions of our work. So social marketing was born from a partnership between marketing and the social sciences. And since then, various social marketing key authors have underlined its multidisciplinary dimension and the crossover that exists with other fields and approaches inside the behavior change area. This generic approach between CC and social marketing shows some connections with mutual benefits, let's say, especially on certain topics. A recent study by Cook and others about the most common mistakes made by social marketeers pointed to the possibility that social marketeers are bringing preconceived notions to the design and implementation phases of social marketing programs. More specifically, they are making assumptions about the priority group, the problem the priority group is faced with, the behavioral objectives for the priority group, and the strategy used to affect the priority group's behavior. This need to improve people's insights and involvement is a strong argument to develop concepts and processes like critical consciousness in social marketing. In a study about social marketing theory, theory development goals, Rundle Thiel and others estimated between 60 and 83 the number of different models and theories relating to understanding and predicting behavior. But according to those actors, to those authors, many of those theories fail to account for complexity arising when a larger systems viewpoint is taken. So actually there is a need for social marketing to extend its theoretical lens. Now, this present review was only a first step to approach these two fields, CC and social marketing. It provides some information, we believe, but actually it requires development, rigorous testing, and replication to determine the real capacity of this approach, and obviously to deliver positive change across diverse social contexts. Thank you very much.